Hi everybody, this is Observatories of My Mind here. Sorry it's taken me a while to get back to part 2 of this book that I was reading. This Means Everlasting Life. And I'd stopped on 7, so I'm going to try and do this again. And I'm going to start reading here. So here it goes, guys. And I'm going to give you my interpretation of what I think I get from this afterwards. And I'd appreciate your comments of what you get after this. To prove faith in the word of truth, the hearer must now become Christ's follower, copying him by making an unconditional, irrecoverable presentation of himself to God to do the divine will. He does this with full faith in God's Son as his ransom and as his sole means of gaining righteousness from God. Does he then get baptized in water to symbolize his dedication of himself to God's sacred service? Yes, in imitation of Jesus and in obedience to his command, he gets baptized at the earliest opportunity, as believers on the day of Pentecost did, as Saul of Tarsus and Cornelius did. Where now does being born from Spirit come in? Just as the water from which a believer is born is not person, neither is the Spirit, but the believer is born from God and by means of his Spirit, or life-giving active force. When the perfect man Jesus was baptized in water, God brought him forth, or begot him as his spiritual son, and acknowledged him with words which Jesus as well as John the Baptist heard. You are my Son, the beloved, and I have approved you. Luke 3:21-22, New World Translation. He was now begotten from God by means of his Spirit, and there was a manifestation of that Spirit force in the form of a dove. He was now a spiritual Son of God, and was now definitively on his way back to heaven, where he had been God's only begotten Spirit Son. It was as a newly begotten spiritual Son that he was also anointed with God's Spirit, and so became the Messiah, or Anointed One. At Nazareth he declared this fact, saying, Jehovah's Spirit is upon me, because he anointed me. Luke 4:16-18, New World Translations. 9. That water baptism of Jesus was only a symbol. It was not the main baptism for him. He must undergo a baptism into death, by which he proved his complete integrity, obedience, and faithfulness to God to the limit, and by which also he laid down his human life as a ransom sacrifice for condemned mankind. 3 years after his water baptism, he said, I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and how I am being distressed until it is finished. Luke 12:50, New World Translations. A half year later it was finished in his death at Calvary. But a person baptized is raised up to a future course of life, and likewise Jesus was raised up to life, but not to human life again. He had forever sacrificed that behalf of mankind. If he had taken it back on the third day after dying, he would have sacrificed it for only 3 days, and mankind would not be entitled to enjoy perfect human life forever. But at Jordan River he had begotten of God to be a spiritual son, and had heavenly promises set before him. So when he was raised from dead, he was resurrected, an immortal spirit Son of God. That his is directly stated. Christ died once for all time concerning sins, a righteous person for unrighteous ones, that he might lead you to God, he being put to death in the flesh, but being made alive in the spirit. Because his disciples could not see spiritual creatures, the resurrected Jesus manifested himself to them in flesh, materializing a human body for each occasion, just as the spirit angels did on his resurrection day and his day of ascension to heaven. 10. Can believers be baptized into Christ's death and be resurrected like him to heavenly life? Yes. Jesus told his disciples they could, saying, "The cup I am drinking you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am being baptized you will be baptized." This means they must sacrifice their human lives in God's service, forever giving up the prospect of living as human creatures, perfect in the righteous new world, that they may be counted as laying down such perfect human life privileges. The right to perfect human life which Jesus by his sacrifice brought for them is counted to them because of their faith in him as ransomer. God's reckoning of human perfection to them, his inputting of righteousness in the flesh to them, is their justification in his sight. It is their being declared righteous by him through his Son, who lived a perfectly righteous human life. Persons thus justified or declared righteous in order to be sacrificed with Christ have hope of heavenly glory. Therefore, now that we have been declared righteous as a result of faith, let us enjoy peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom also we have gained our approach by faith into this undeserved kindness in which we now stand, and let us exult, based on hopes of glory of God. Much more, therefore, since we have been declared righteous, now by his blood shall we be saved through him from wrath. Romans 5:1, 2, and 9, New World Translations. 11. When Jesus was escaped for sacrifice at his baptism in water, he was begotten to heavenly life by God's Spirit, and was from then on counted as his spiritual son. At his resurrection from death, he was perfected as a spirit creature and was clothed upon with darkness, immorality. When God justifies or declares any believers in Jesus Christ righteous, he counts each justified believer acceptable for the sacrifice of all things human and earthly. Then it is that God begets them by his Spirit, adopting them as his Spirit sons. They are now in the way to heavenly life and are a new creation. Consequently, if anyone is in union with Christ, he is a new creation. The only things passed away, look, new things have come into existence. They do not yet have immortality, but have a hope of it set before them, and so seek it as a prize, everlasting life to those who are seeking glory and honor and incorruptibleness by endurance, in which that is good. To gain that incorruptible prize, they must be loyal to God, even at the cost of their human lives. The deathless, resurrected Jesus encourages them to complete integrity. Prove yourselves faithful even with the danger of death, and I will give you the crown of life. They do not know what it is to be a spirit, or what they will be like in the resurrection, but they do know they are now God's adopted sons, born from water and spirit. With confidence they say, "Now we are children of God," but as yet it has not been made manifest what we shall be. We do know that whatever he is made manifest, we shall be like him, because we shall see him just as he is. 1 John 3:2, New World Translations. 12. When believers are justified or declared righteous for their faith and by means of Jesus' blood, they are then devoted to sacrifice, and their baptism into his death begins. To such ones, the apostle writes, "Do you not know that all of us who were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? Therefore we were buried with him through our baptism into his death, in order that just as Christ was raised up from the dead through the glory of his Father, we also should likewise walk in newness of life. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, we shall certainly also be united with him in the likeness of his resurrection. If we have died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him. For we know that Christ, now that he has been raised up from the dead, dies no more. Death is master over him no more. So since Jesus' resurrection has a glorious spirit to heavenly life, he is immortal, incorruptible, by being raised from death in the likeness of his resurrection. His faithful followers gain immortality. Jesus slept in death in the tomb for 3 days. When the baptism of his followers into his death is fully carried out, they too sleep in death and must await his return in glory, his coming in his kingdom. Then he raises them, but not to the human life. Says it. Then he raises them, but not into the human life, which they sacrificed. No, they are changed to spirit, and they enter into heavenly life with him, explaining why they must be changed, and to what the apostle writes. 13. Flesh and blood cannot inherit God's kingdom. Neither does corruption inherit incorruption. Look, I tell you a sacred secret. We shall not all fall asleep in death, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, during the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised up incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this which is corruptible must put on incorruption, and this which is immortal must put on immortality. But when this which is corruptible puts on incorruption, and this which is immortal puts on immortality, then the saying will take place that is written, death is swallowed up forever. 1 Corinthians 15:50-54, New World Translations. 14. The Christian remnant who die faithful after his return or during his second presence do not need to sleep on in death, waiting for his second coming. With him invisibly present, they are changed instantly after dying as humans to immortal life above. That is the end of that one. There's the little questions they have at the end of this thing at each page. You guys all know that, for any of you that were Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'll just read these last two. How does the apostle explain it at 1 Corinthians 15:50-54? Who do not fall asleep at death, and why? Well, we know what it says. And what it said, instantly after dying as humans to immortal life above. So you guys tell me what you think. For a lot of you who grew up and were taught to remember certain scriptures, you can no longer hear or speak or see, no work, in Hades because you were asleep and you don't go to heaven. And heaven's only for 144,000. And they say you can't see God, and no one has seen God and lived. But you read this publication, and it's from their book, and it talks about how you turn into a spirit creature and Jesus being begotten, and how you're going to go to heaven. And tell me now that they've got new light after, they published this book, that you don't go to heaven and only 144,000 go to heaven. Doesn't make sense to me. And think about it. If God was able to create and make Jesus into a human life, and he created all of us, doesn't it make sense that he would go and be able to do the same thing and be able to create us into the spirit realm, where there is absolutely nothing? If you are a believer, I'm not going to stress even, my beliefs or whatever, but I'm just using analogies here. Peace. Don't need nothing in heaven. Don't need to eat. Don't need to sleep. Everything's perfect. Everything's nice. And all these different things. Think logically when you're using analogies, when you're hearing things being read to you. Try to picture these things as they're being read to you, because there's a lot of different things in here. You hear the word spirit mentioned a lot and other different things, but even in this, you see this picture, just show that a little bit of Jesus, when he's getting baptized and stuff. And in the Bible, there are scriptures. I didn't read all of them that are in here, of course. I tried to read some of them, of scriptures that give you guys references to look at, because there was more scriptures they were referring to, of course, in here for you to look at. But there are scriptures in the Bible that will tell you, about seeing things in heaven and being in heaven and different things. But, I'm not going to sit here and tell you where to find exactly all those are at either, because you need to go and do your own research and find the book and get yourself another book. I'll stress that. That's not a Watchtower Bible. You can get many different copies and just look at different variations of how they're printed and stuff. But, do your research when it comes to things. And try to, help build people up. And I know there's volumes of all these new channels and new people coming out, and I'm so happy for all these new people. And the Vast Apostate Hour group is getting bigger with lots more people, and it just brings me joy. And just something really quick, I seen someone post a picture how his Jehovah's Witness wife got a Christmas tree and went out and decorated it and everything, and they got to do it as a family, and more people are waking up, and that is awesome. And all this, and it's great to see this big movement, this monument of people and everyone waking up. And I'm working on a little story, and I'm working on writing stuff that's coming to my journey, my mission to Warwick must be there, have to be there type thing. And I'm going to try to get that out pretty soon. As of course, I'm the mom who's trying to wake her kids up and their father, along with others, because this is a fight, this is a mission. We all need to stand together. We all need to say, no, I am not going to shut up. And no, I'm not just, I'm going to put up, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, stick with it. And for, all of us out there doing the work and stuff, yes, we can do it. We can do it. We can keep at it. We can keep the pressure. And, talk to your local Congress, or people, or whatever you can get a hold of. If more voices get together and start bringing this stuff up, people are friendly, maybe might get sick of it and be like, okay, what's up with this? I've gotten 20 emails, or 200 emails, which is better, right? From these people about the same subject. And, let's get the word out that way too, so we can try to reach more people. And in the news and different things, and there's so many different things. I, read this story about this girl. She was being molested by her grandfather, of all people. Her mom was sick with cancer, and she got put in her grandparents' care with her brother. And her grandpa started doing things to her, and he was an elder. And a lot of people, are elders and stuff. I'm getting into that, speaking about the child molestation part again, which is away from the book that I was reading, but I have to bring a little bit of that up too because I don't get on here very often. And it's just something I came across. And hearing the heart-wrenching stories of how the details and everything went, it was up till she was 13 when he finally stopped, and how her family shunned her, and even her own grandmother shunned her, and her mom, and her dad, and no one wanted anything to do with her. No one in the congregation. No one took to her. They took to the grandfather pedophile side. He ended up going to prison and got what he deserved, and now he's no longer alive. And it's just heartbreaking to know on the details she had to go through. I couldn't imagine of being tortured like that and not being believed, and then having everyone want to protect the pedophile, all on saving the grace of a name that's not even God's real name. Do your research, people. I can't stress that enough. Because once you start digging, you're going to keep digging, but that light is getting brighter on that tower, and pretty soon it's going to explode, and there's nothing that's going to be able to hold to it. And that's a day that we're all hoping for. And it's out of love. We don't do this out of hate. But to see and everything that she went through, and she finally, she got a little bit of justice. The judge believed her, and the grandpa got some years in prison. And then I read other people's posts, and I see someone else makes a comment about how their dad didn't do nothing about it. But this boy puts him and two of his brothers were molested by their older J.W. stepbrother for so many years. And just so many cases of nasty and gross things, and people just putting these things up, and everyone sharing their stories and getting them out. And you're brave, every single one of you. You can do it. New people, they're saying, I'm taking baby steps. I'm just little. I'm just now waking up. I've been awake this many years, or this many days. But once you wake up, it's just an experience all on its own. And everyone's going to wake up differently, but we're all there for each other. We're the apostate family, and yeah. And can't wait to meet with some of you guys again and hang out with you, because it's just going to be awesome. And I'm going to take this and make this short, but get out there, do your facts. Silence of the Lambs, jwfacts.com, all these different places. There's even news media outlet places you can go to. Do your research. And peace to you all, my love to you all, and let me know what your comments are, what you think of what I, read to you by comparing the two videos, with this chapter. And, yeah.